Here we are, outside one of the oldest homes in D.C., the Decatur House. Built in 1818 by the early American naval hero Stephen Decatur for himself and his wife Susan, the home is now the site of an African American history museum. The reasons for that decision are also very interesting, but we'll save that story for when we have some more time. Visitors to the museum often report an extreme abdominal pain and sickness, many of them being forced to collapse into the nearest piece of furniture or even to flee the very premises in the hopes of abating this mysterious sickness. It's speculated by many that this pain, this phantom pain, may be a sort of sympathy symptom for the agonizing death of its first inhabitant, Stephen Decatur. Early in his naval career, Decatur had studied under an older man, Commodore James Barron. Now, this James Barron had suffered an embarrassing defeat some years before the house was even built, losing his ship to the British Navy. Decatur was one of his most vocal critics, even serving on the tribunal which court-martialed Barron for his actions and eventually relieved him of command for 5 years without pay. After this court-martial, Barron fled the country in embarrassment to Copenhagen for a little over 11 years. But on his return, stateside, his anger at the younger man for his perceived betrayal, being his former student, burned on, unabated. Barron challenged Decatur to a duel unless he recant his criticisms publicly. Of course, Decatur refused to do so and accepted the terms of the fight. The two met on the lawn, but rather than standing back to back and taking paces away to turn and fire upon a cue, they agreed to start practically arm's lengths away from each other, face to face, while the man who helped to organize the duel, Bainbridge, counted 1, 2, 3. Neither man was to fire any earlier than the count of 1, nor any later than the count of 3. Bainbridge began his count. 1. Before the count of 2, both shots had rang out. Barron, the older man, had been shot in the abdomen, the bullet ricocheting inside of his body until it finally landed in his thigh. Decatur had been pierced in the pelvic area, with several of his arteries being cut and damaged in the process. The two men lay, mortally wounded. Decatur weeping, "Lord, I am a dead man." Barron sincerely forgiving his student. Decatur returned home to suffer in this very bedroom for 2 days straight from his wounds, before finally passing away in the night around 10:30 in the evening. Barron survived the duel, eventually being reinstated to naval command. Almost immediately following Decatur's death, reports began to abound of appearances of his spirit, often standing in the bedroom window, gazing out, perhaps in anticipation of the duel. These window appearances became so persistent and disturbing, it was eventually decided that the window should be boarded up, in hopes of perhaps abating this dread spirit. But the spirit continued to show. Now he's most often seen rushing out the back door of the house, particularly in the early morning hours, with a pistol in each hand. Is he hoping for a second shot at his fatal duel? Does he want revenge on his teacher-turned-murderer? Whatever the reasons for this errant spirit's persistence, in the mortal realm. All that we and the inhabitants of this neighborhood can hope is that he be put to rest and leave this world in peace.